a reality so terrifying that the mind prefers the myth, simply because the myth allows for the possibility of a nightmare you might actually wake up from. To enter the world of Dino Crisis 2 is to experience the sickening clarity of total irrelevance. We are accustomed to being the protagonists of our own era, but here, you are merely a vivid, synthetic contrast. A jagged, blue-tinted glitch in a masterpiece that was painted millions of years before your ancestors learned to breathe. It is a world where being lost is a mercy. The reality is much colder. You are not a traveler. You are a disappearance in progress. You are a footnote in a language that has no word for human, a frantic pulse of electricity in a jungle that only speaks in the slow, rhythmic thrum of the hunt. Every step you take through the humid, oxygen-heavy air feels like a gamble against a universe that doesn't even care to know your name. In this green, screaming hell, the hard truth is that you might not even live long enough to find out why you died. There is no grand monologue from the predator, no moment of realization, only the sudden, wet snap of a jaw and the indifferent rustle of the ferns closing behind you. The aesthetic is one of existential erasure, where your modern armor and your high-grain explosives are just colorful wrappers for the meat inside. This is a state of being where we move past the primitive fear of the unknown and into the cold, calculated certainty of the inevitable. It is no longer a question of if the end is coming, but rather a countdown to when the clock of the 21st century finally stops ticking in the Cretaceous mud. The air is thick with the scent of ozone and ancient rot, a sensory reminder that your time is a borrowed currency that is rapidly losing its value. We find ourselves standing on the edge of a temporal wound, looking into a mirror of our own extinction. So, let us descend. Let us pull back the vines from the rusted steel and look closer at the tactical nihilism that defines this journey. Let us examine the beautiful, violent mechanics of a world that has already decided you don't belong in it. This is the anatomy of a failed future. This is the feeling of Dino Crisis 2. When we look at the setting of Dino Crisis 2, we aren't just looking at a map, we are witnessing a biological and mechanical pileup. It is a jagged, slate-gray needle trying to sew itself into the soft green flesh of a prehistoric world. There is a sharp, almost offensive contrast here, in the rigid geometry of human arrogance forced into a shotgun marriage with the chaotic, curving fractals of the Cretaceous. Every 90-degree angle of a shipping container, every perfectly vertical ladder, and every cold, flat concrete floor acts as a silent middle finger to the jungle. It's a glitch in reality. It feels like finding a sleek, silver smartphone dropped into a primordial swamp. The object is technically superior, yet in this environment, it looks fragile, alien, and utterly doomed. In this landscape, color is the primary theater of war. We see the gray not just as a pigment, but as an aesthetic of sterility, the footprint of a laboratory civilization that thought it could categorize and cage time itself. It feels like a military operating room, set up in the center of a sacrificial altar. The monitors are high-tech, the steel is medical grade, but the patient is a world that has been dead for 65 million years, and it is waking up hungry. And because these two eras are forced to coexist, they begin to bleed into one another through a process of industrial necrosis. The humidity of the past acts as an invisible antagonist, a slow-motion tidal wave eating away at the modern world. We see the oxidation, the gray metal turning a bruised orange, the smooth surfaces becoming pitted and scarred. It is a high-tech melancholy. Our modern identity is built upon the stubborn myth of permanence, a belief that if we forge it in steel and power it with lightning, it will last forever. But in the wet, prehistoric lungs of the Dino Crisis 2 setting, we are forced to confront a much harder truth. Our progress is merely a temporary fever that the jungle is currently breaking. We look at the reinforced bulkheads and the heavy perimeter fences and sea fortresses, but to the Cretaceous, these are nothing more than tin cans, and the jungle is the opener. There's a quiet, molecular defeat occurring in every frame of this world. We see the gray of our future being methodically eaten by the orange of oxidation, a slow-motion meal where the steel doesn't actually protect us. It merely marks the spot where we've been cornered. Our greatest architectural achievements aren't landmarks here. They are debris. Even our most ethereal gift, the spark of electricity, feels pathetic when draped in primeval slime. In any other story, a flickering neon sign is a beacon of life. But here, it is a death gasp. We brought binary code to a world that only understands biology, and our power grids have become little more than candles in a hurricane. This high-tech glow doesn't illuminate a path to safety. It serves as a dinner bell made of light, a humming signal to every predator in the bush that something soft, synthetic, and out of place has arrived. Ultimately, we didn't bring the future to the past. We brought trash to a temple. Our technology is a layer of synthetic skin that the jungle is peeling off with indifferent ease, revealing the raw, red, eternal reality underneath. The moss is the final judge, and it doesn't scream or fight. It simply settles. When a discarded assault rifle is swallowed by the greenery, it represents the final triumph of the organic. We are playing a desperate game of King of the Hill on a mountain that was already bored of us before we even learned to walk upright. Every room Dylan or Regina enter feels like a pressure vessel. The fences, the bulkheads, the heavy iron shutters, they aren't just infrastructure. They're a desperate tug of war. A high-tension power line, strung between two ancient, gnarled trees, is the trembling grip of the future, trying to hold back the immovable strength of the past. Ultimately, the setting of Dino Crisis 2 is the geometry of the grave. It is the visual proof that no matter how sharp our edges or how gray our steel, the green, wet mouth of history will eventually open wide enough to swallow us whole. It is a post-human museum where the bloodstains on the concrete are the only art pieces left to tell the story of the end of progress. It is the beauty of a catastrophe that hasn't quite finished happening yet. In the ecosystem of Dino Crisis 2, the dinosaur is not a monster in the cinematic sense. It is a biological absolute. From the opening frames, the game strips away the comfort of our modern superiority with the clinical coldness of a predator's gaze. We are not tourists in this kingdom, and we certainly aren't its conquerors. We are a sudden, unwanted infestation, a synthetic pestilence of Kevlar and cordite that has dared to itch the skin of a million-year-old giant. The introduction serves as a brutal calibration of our worth. When the raptor and the T-Rex descend upon the team, it isn't a battle, it's a cleaning. The ease with which our tactical units are dismantled feels less like warfare and more like a predator clearing away a minor annoyance before breakfast. This is the aesthetic of total vulnerability. We are introduced to the hierarchy of the Cretaceous by being placed firmly at the bottom of the food chain, a position where our guns feel like toothpicks and our tanks feel like hollow toys. As we descend deeper into this green hell, the diversity of our landlords becomes a psychological weight. We encounter the swarming, hive-mind hunger of the Compsognathus, the silent, serpentine shadows of the long-necked terrors in the deep, and the aerial dominance of the Pteranodon, creatures that turn the very air and water into theaters of execution. But nothing prepares the soul for the Giganotosaurus. The game treats this creature not as an animal, but as a force of nature, a rumor that eats men. The files we recover are the frantic scribblings of the doomed, whispering about a dead T-Rex found with its throat crushed by impossible teeth. This is the ultimate truth. In this world, even the king of the dinosaurs is just another link in a chain we cannot see. In the realm of Dino Crisis 2, the Giganotosaurus is not merely a biological entity, it is a vortex of pure absence. It represents the aesthetic of the unknowable, the skin-crawling realization that the most dangerous thing in the jungle is the one that hasn't been seen, because it leaves no witnesses to describe it. It is a ghost story, written in broken bone and crushed steel, a mythic terror that exists in the white space of the map. This is the horror of a subliminal predator. When we find the carcass of a T-Rex, the supposed king of this era, with its throat torn open by impossible teeth, our internal logic suffers a catastrophic collapse. It is the fear of the greater weight. We spent our lives believing the T-Rex was the ceiling of terrestrial violence, only to find that it is merely the floor for something much darker. It's like a deep-sea diver reaching what they thought was the bottom of the ocean, only to see a massive, unblinking eye open beneath their feet. The hard truth here is that our imagination is too small to contain the reality of this creature. We are trying to process a God-sized threat with a scavenger-sized brain. There is a specific cold dread in the 0% survival rate. Most monsters are defined by their traits, the way they howl, the way they move, the texture of their skin. But the Giganotosaurus is defined by what is missing. It is the empty chair at the table. It is the radio silence from a veteran squad. It is the footprint that is too large to be a footprint and must surely be a crater. This is the aesthetic of the void. We are forced to hallucinate our own demise because the reality is too terrifying to be documented. To encounter it is to be erased from history, to become a disappearance rather than a casualty. Ultimately, this creature is the physical manifestation of cosmic indifference. It doesn't hate us. It doesn't even notice us. To the Giganotosaurus, we aren't even a snack. We are the dust that its shadow passes over. It is the ultimate unknowable because it exists outside the human scale of conflict. We can shoot at it, we can run from it, but we can never truly understand it because you cannot understand a force that deletes you before you can even blink. It is the shadow of the mountain moving toward you, a reality so terrifying that the mind prefers the myth, simply because the myth allows for the possibility of a nightmare you might actually wake up from. It is the shadow that has no name until it is too late to scream it. When we finally face such a show of force, the comparison to a fly fighting a bear feels almost too generous. A fly might at least escape the bear's notice. We, with our loud engines and flashing muzzles, are an active provocation to a god of flesh and bone. Our technology doesn't compete with this power. It merely highlights our fragility. Our tactical superiority is a joke with no punchline. We are fighting a war against the very concept of apex predation, and the dinosaur is the physical manifestation of a universe that does not care how many bullets you have left. It is the triumph of the primal maw over the mechanical mind, a reminder that when the earth finally decides to shake us off, it won't be with a whimper, but with the snap of a jaw that has been waiting for an eon. The save room in Dino Crisis 2 is not merely a pause in the action, it is a tactical tabernacle, a fragile sanctuary of the dry in a world that is drowning in the wet. When you cross that threshold, you aren't just entering a room, you are entering a different state of existence. The aesthetic is one of sterile isolation, whether it is the flickering, shadow-drenched medical bay, cluttered with the paper trails of a dead colony, or the cramped, metallic belly of your landing ship. These spaces represent the last strongholds of human order. Inside these walls, the air feels filtered, processed, and thin, standing in defiant contrast to the heavy, oxygen-rich soup of the jungle outside. It is the feeling of being inside a diving bell, at the bottom of a prehistoric ocean. You can hear the hull creaking. You know the pressure of the Cretaceous is pushing against the glass. But for a few stolen minutes, you are allowed the luxury of a heartbeat that isn't racing. The home aesthetic here is deeply abstract and hauntingly cold. It is a home built of cables, CRT monitors, and the low industrial hum of a cooling fan. This is comfort via technology, the only kind of safety the 21st century knows how to provide. We treat a glowing computer terminal like a hearth fire, warming ourselves not with heat, but with the cold, blue light of data. It is the aesthetic of the digital lighthouse. The save room is the only place where your logic still works, where the rules of points and inventory override the law of tooth and claw. But this safety is laced with a sharp, lingering dread. The haunting truth of the save room is its temporary nature. You know that beyond the bulkhead, the very earth is hostile. You aren't just hiding from the raptors. You are hiding from a planet that is actively trying to digest you. The plants are encroaching, the humidity is rotting the sensors, and the dirt itself is thirsty for your blood. This makes the calm of the save room feel sacred yet stolen. It is the beauty of the artificial shelter, a tiny synthetic bubble of 2010, floating in an infinite sea of 65 million BC. To sit in that silence, surrounded by the ghosts of long-lost souls and the blinking lights of failed machines, is to experience the ultimate human paradox. We feel most at home when we are surrounded by the very technology that has utterly failed to save us. It is a moment of peace in the center of a meat grinder, a brief, poetic breath of air before you have to step back out into the green, screaming maw of history.